You're joining me today at Gingham Fisheries in Horwich for my first method feeder session of 2026. We are now deep into the winter, and with lakes freezing multiple times this year, the fishing is getting much more challenging. But when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Winter really is one of my favourite times of the year to fish. You get a sense of tranquility that you don't get through the warmer months. I knew it was going to be a tough day when I arrived at the fishery, and the water was glassy calm and a thick fog was emerging through the trees. It was both eerie and a beautiful setting. I decided on a peg that was facing the deepest part of the lake. One of the best tips I can give you for winter fishing is to find those deep areas. More often than not, that's where the carp are going to be on cold days. I'm going to be fishing on 2 specimen rods today with bite alarms. I recommend doing this in winter. Bites will be few and far between, so I don't like sitting and watching the quiver tip. You're more likely to recast and mess about with the feeder. I'm going with my 2mm contrast pellets today, which are a 50-50 mix of light and dark pellets. I'll probably only cast out a handful of times, so half a bag is plenty. When the lake water's cold, I'll soak these pellets for the full 2 minutes. The whole process of soaking pellets takes around 15 minutes, so make sure that's the first thing you do when you get to your swim. I'm going to be carrying on testing out my method feeder inside a solid bag technique, but not just that, I'm going to set it against a normal banjo feeder and we'll see what method works best today. I opted for carp size wafters to start with, just to see whether we can get through to some of the bigger fish. We can always scale down a little bit later on in the day and target a couple of silvers. Let's get into it, folks. Let's see what happens. One of the most important stages when preparing method feeder pellets is letting them sit for 10 or 15 minutes after you've soaked them for 2 minutes. And it's a stage that a lot of people forget to do, but it's so important because when you let them sit, they carry on absorbing the rest of all the water and moisture that's around them, and they become really soft, fluffy and sticky, and that'll give you perfect method feeder pellets every single time. So let them sit, let them err like this in one of these little trays, and I promise you they will be absolutely perfect. So these are probably about right now. They've finished taking on all that water. What will happen is when we squeeze these, they'll stick together, but they still retain all the pellet shapes, and that is what you want. But you also want them to break down into individual pellets if you run your fingers through them. That is how you want them to be. These are perfect method feeder pellets. So what I'm going to do with them now is put them into my tub, and they're good to go. And what we can do throughout the day, if we feel like they're drying up a little bit too much, is just add a splash of water. Now, everybody's got their own way of doing things. I prefer to do mine like this. If you're doing the overnight method, what I recommend is probably about after half an hour of having them in the fridge, flip the tub. That way the bottom pellets don't get soggier than the top pellets. A little top tip there for you. But these are ready. All we need to do now is get set up for method feeder fishing. As I've said, I'm using one on a banjo feeder, which is already set up in my bag. I will talk you through my method feeder setup and rig very shortly on both, and on the other rod I'm going to be carrying on testing my theory about putting the method feeder in a solid bag in winter. Now this is getting a lot of controversy on the channel because people are saying, well, why not just use a solid bag? Why not just use an inline lead and do it that way? Yes, you can do that, but this is a lot quicker and a lot simpler, as I'm going to show you. You're not having to fill the solid bag up with dry pellets. You're not having to get it compacted right down. You're literally just loading your method feeder up, putting it in a solid bag, sealing it off and getting it out. It's quicker, and it's kind of blurring the lines a little bit between match fishing tactics or coarse fishing tactics and big carp tactics. So it's just something I'm trying out. If you don't want to do it, you don't need to do it. I like to do these little tests. I always like to try and improve my fishing where I can, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm having fun, I'm testing things. So we're going to pit this method using a method feeder, standard flatbed method feeder, inside a solid bag against the banjo feeder, and we'll see which is the better tactic. I'm going to fish both rods on the same line in the deepest spot of this lake. Now this is a very, very deep lake, so it's a great test of this tactic, because as I've said on previous videos, putting it in that solid bag will get it down on the bottom, nothing's going to come off the method feeder, and you're going to be left with a perfect little pouch parcel of bait on the bottom. And the other thing that goes well with this tactic is the bigger hook baits. Now these are 10 times 14 mil, so bigger than your average coarse fishing wafter, but this is going to single out the carp away from the bream, and it's the carp that we're targeting today. Now that's not to say that we aren't going to get bream on these today, because the greedy sods will still eat the bigger wafters, but it's just going to help single out some of the better fish, in my opinion. And if you're worried about having to use bigger hooks with this method, you really don't have to. I'm going to show you that today. As long as you're counterbalancing the wafter with a bait screw, an 8mm bait screw, you're going to be absolutely fine. These are going to sit on the bottom, waft around perfectly, and what you'll get is a neat little parcel of pellets on the bottom in the solid bag, and you'll get that really bright, visible big wafter sat on top. We're still going to mould our pellets around the feeder, again straight in the solid bag and straight out. I'm going to show you how to do all that. Also folks, this video might be a little bit shorter than my normal videos. The reason being is I'm not going to be doing as much talking. I've irritated my vocal cords again, and my throat is really, really sore. So I'm going to try and rest it. I'm going to do some voiceovers and a mix of things, and just do something a little bit different on the channel. Only for the next few videos, just letting my voice recover. So I'm really sorry that they're a little bit shorter, but I'm hoping that they're still going to be educational and they're still going to be enjoyable for you. A short video is better than no video, eh? So that's what we're going to be doing for the next few weeks. And if you're new to the channel, I just want to say thanks very much for tuning in. I hope to earn your subscription today by getting a couple of carp on the bank. Look folks, if I get 1 or 2 fish in a deep winter session, freezing cold day like it is today, then I'm going to be more than happy. You've seen how foggy it is. It's really cold. Obviously I've got my neck warmer on, 1 to keep myself warm, and 2 so that I'm not breathing in cold air all day long. So I'm trying to soothe my vocal cords. So if you see me wearing this, I'm not going robbing a bank, I'm trying to retain some moisture in my throat because the cold air is really dry, and obviously when you're talking all day outside, it really gets to it. It's horrible. Let's get into this. I'm going to show you my year-round method feeder setup and why it's so effective. So I'm going to choose myself a hook length. Like I said, today we're using the bigger wafters, but I'm going to be using a size 10 feeder hook, so nothing different. So you should be able to see this on the camera, but there we go. I've got an 8mm bait screw there. We've got our size 10 feeder hook, and that hair with the bait screw on is just trapped in place there by a little tiny bit of silicone tubing. That's knotless knotted. Now I like to use a feeder hook that's got a slightly outturned eye, because that'll give the hook its best chance of catching. As you can see, it's a really wide gape hook, and that'll nail them 9 times out of 10, I promise you that. So that hook length's between 3 and 4 inch. I usually tie mine about 3.5 to 4 inch long, but that is absolutely perfect. In terms of the method feeder setup, I like to use banjo feeders year round. The reason being is you can pack your pellets really tight into the banjo feeder. It's got high sides, and this is going to get you down to the bottom. Like I said, 8-9 times out of 10, it's going to land like that. All your pellets are going to take on all the water on the bottom of the lake, and they all bubble out of the feeder. So that's the presentation that you want. Sometimes when you're using a flatbed method feeder, they'll all just break off on the cast, which is obviously not what you want. It's just completely ruining how effective the method feeder is. So in my opinion, banjo feeders, hybrid feeders are the way forward year round. High sides are just absolutely brilliant for retaining the bait. So pack your pellets in. I like to do a nice firm layer first, and then fold my hook length over and bury my bait in. Now I'm using my own method feeder inserts here. You can use any standard plastic insert. There's a couple of things to note when choosing inserts. I like to choose an insert that pushes firmly into the bottom of the feeder, but will come out of the feeder on the bolt every single time. That's why I like using my beads, because they're rubber and not plastic, so you get a nice firm grip inside the feeder, which is going to help with that bolt effect. So that's why snug fitting inserts like this will hook more fish than a speed bead. Now that's especially true if your setup's on a bite alarm like I'm using today on a specimen rod. These aren't carp rods or specimen rods, they're nice and soft for some of the smaller carp. Now that's not necessarily true when you're using a quiver tip, because what will happen a lot of the time, especially in summer, the carp will hook themselves against the resistance on the quiver tip, whereas we don't have that here with this method. So we need something that's going to help set the hook. So that nice little firm insert is going to set the hook, but you don't want it too firm. If it's too firm, then the fish has got a chance of breaking your hook length. You want it to come out on the bolt, so don't use a metal swivel or anything like that. That's not the most effective way to set it up. My inserts here, they just have a little rubber part which pulls down, and then my metal speed clip there which retains the hook length. So I'm just going to put that on, pull everything back down together, and that is good to go. So on the first cast, I'm actually going to use yellow on both, and we'll swap that to a pink a little bit later on in the day if we're not getting any bites. But I wanted to keep the same hook bait on both rods, just so it's going to be a fair test of these two methods. So that's it, folks, that's that ready to go. Let's set the other one up. Just so it is a fair test, I've also kept the weight of the feeders the same. So the banjo feed is 30 gram and these are 30 gram. These have got a longer stem, which is obviously going to help us to bind the solid bag around that stem. We're just going to lick and stick it to the stem. Really simple. We don't need to tie it off or anything like that. So wider distance method feeders have longer stems. It gives them more stability on the cast. Long stem method feeders are actually really popular on the continent in Europe. They're really popular, and they're not used half as much in the UK a lot of the times because we're not casting very far. Now this is quite a big water, and I'm going to be casting 30 meters ish, 40 meters, not far at all. It's just a flick out, but these are still going to sit nicely on the bottom. The long stem doesn't put the fish off or anything like that, so I'm going to be using these more this year, I reckon, and we'll give these a good go. Method feeders on, inserts on. We're going to get ourselves the exact same hook length as we put on the other rod. Let's get a wafter on that, and we'll get this one out first. Now the way this fishery is laid out is very interesting. It was actually made in the Victorian era, and they made it like a big bath so that you can actually drain this reservoir all the way down to the bottom. So it kind of slopes down at an angle towards a really deep bowl here, and you can see this pipe behind me is what you can use to actually siphon it out. This used to be all the way to the top, which would have been an extremely deep fishery. It was always known as a perch water, but he's drained it down, he's built pegs all the way around here. So yeah, this fishery's got some history to it, and it's one of the reasons that I love fishing it. Press our wafter and feeder hook in there, put some more pellets over the top, and then we're going to mould that around the method feeder. Now with banjo feeders and hybrid feeders, you don't actually use a mould, you don't need a mould with them. All you need to do is thumb load them in, which I'm going to show you in a second. But there you go, that's the method feeder loaded. And these pellets are dry enough that they're not going to melt the solid bag with a bit of luck. I'm going to put some liquid on the outside of the bag, and I'll put some liquid on the outside of the hybrid feeder or banjo feeder as well. So let me show you. Let's get one of my solid bags here. These are 60 times 130 mil, and it might take these a little bit of time to melt, but they are fast melting, so it won't be too bad. So the reason I'm doing this and not using a solid bag, how much easier is that than having to faff about getting your lead to one side, you know, trying to fill it with pellets. This is a really minimalistic approach. So there we go. So there it is in the solid bag. I'm just going to lick my fingers and spin this solid bag around the stem, and that is enough to seal it for the flight. What you also need to do is take yourself a baiting needle and just pierce the bag a couple of times, like that. Now I'm going to take the corners, lick and stick them down, and that is getting cast out. It's done. Again, I'm going to have these feeders on the same line. Towards the middle of the lake there. It's still sinking. This method on deep fisheries is absolutely perfect. You'd be surprised at how many pellets you lose on the way down, and it creates a spread, which is something that I just don't want in the colder months. I want a tight little parcel on the bottom. But that's that fishing, simple as that. Let's do the banjo, which will be a lot quicker. So with the hybrid or banjo feeder, I've just created a first layer of pellets, which I've put on reasonably tight, but they'll still bubble out on the bottom over time. Then I'm going to put my bigger wafter on. I'm just going to bury the hook. Now, as I've said, some of them will come off on the cast, which is why the solid bag I think is going to be better. Wafter's showing, which is absolutely fine. It's a big wafter, but it's really visible. So we've just created a little small parcel of bait there, which is ideal in winter. Need to remember to let them sink because of how deep it is. There we go, folks, we're fishing. I've just seen the owner coming round, so I'm just going to have a little bit of a chat with him. I'm going to have a brew and I'll update you if we manage to get anything. With a bit of luck, I'm hoping for at least one fish today. But if I don't, look, that's winter fishing at the end of the day. I've showed you that this works in previous videos, so I'm confident about the approach. Well, while I do want to target the carp, I also don't want to blank. So I'm going to sit on this method for probably about, I don't know, 3 hours. And then if I've had absolutely nothing, if I'm on for a blank, then I will swap onto an 8mm wafter on both rods. Just to try and get something on the bank, just so it's not a wasted video. I know you guys tell me that you're not bothered whether I blank or don't blank. Either way, I guess it still tells you something. And look, it's deep into winter, folks. It happens. What I can do is I've got the same wafters as we're using down there in the carp sizes in 7x8mm. So we'll put one of these on if we're really struggling, and we'll band them and we'll scale down to a size 12 hook. So if push comes to shove, that's what we'll do. The lake's glassy calm. We've got this fog covering it. It's absolutely beautiful. Such a nice eerie morning. It's cold, but obviously it's not freezing cold. I've not even got my coat on. I'm fine in my fleece. Coffee's keeping me warm.
Oh, I knew you'd be on here today, Matt.
How's it going, pal?
I knew it. How are you doing, bud?
Yeah, I'm good. I'll come and have a chat with you. Well, folks, I've just had a proper good chat with one of my subscribers there. We must have been nattering for at least 30 minutes. Meanwhile, the rods have been quiet, but what positive feedback I've just received. And you know what? It's so nice. It is such a compliment. And you know who you are, but I honestly really appreciate that talk. I needed it today. I needed it today. But yeah, rods have been really quiet. I'm thinking of scaling things back, putting smaller wafters on, and we'll see if we can just manage to save the blank to start with. I probably should have gone for that approach first, but I wanted to see whether we could get a winter carp. The rods have been in probably about 40 minutes. Now, I did just want to cast out and leave them for as long as possible. I would say this time of year, if you're fishing on the method feeder, don't be scared of leaving the rods in up to an hour. Don't be scared of it, because I've had bites after 40-45 minutes on the method feeder during the winter months. The fish just aren't moving about as much. That's why sometimes moving the feeders about can help you get a bite, because you might just land on a fish's nose. So that's one of my top winter tips. Don't be scared of moving the feeder about. Like I said, not often. Don't be recasting every 10-15 minutes like you are in summer. I would be leaving it at least 45 minutes to an hour before moving it
So on the next cast we're going to put smaller wafters on, and I reckon I'm going to cast out a little bit further. That's my plan. While the website's been shut, I've had a lot of time for self-reflection, and I've come to the conclusion that it doesn't need to be new year, new me. What it needs to be is new year, old Westy. And what I mean by that is we're going to go back to doing product reviews. The reason that I stopped doing product reviews is because I hate the thought of these big companies gaining off the back of my videos without any kind of recognition whatsoever. But that's the wrong attitude. I'm happy to buy these products with my own money and give you a fair and honest review, because that's the reason that I'm doing these videos, to help you guys out. So I need to remember that. Forget about the big companies. I will happily buy these products, and what I will do is every time I do a review, I will give that product away back to my community. So if I do a review of a product, I'll give it away in that video, because I've got enough fishing stuff. So if I do a product review, that's exactly what I'm going to do. We're also going to go back to doing the fishery reviews. The reason that I stopped doing fishery reviews is because I was getting a lot of aggravation of fishery owners that didn't want me filming. I have no idea why. They get free advertising, I always pay for a day ticket, I don't cause any kind of disturbance, I never give anybody a bad review. So I have no idea why these fishery owners didn't want me filming. But to get back into doing the fishery reviews, I'll also make loads of phone calls to local fisheries, and I'll try and find some places that are happy with me going down there and filming content. I need you to speak to your local bailiffs, I need you to speak to local fishery owners, and if they're happy with me going there doing reviews, get in touch with me. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing next year. As I've said to you in previous videos, we're going to be going with a simple approach, back to basics, nothing complicated, and we're just going to enjoy the fishing. I'm going to put more wildlife shots in the videos. I'm going to be carrying on using my new professional camera setup. So what you're going to be getting is all Westy content, but in a more professional style. So I think we'll be on for a winner with that one, folks. And I'm looking forward to what 2026 brings. I'm going to do my best for you to keep improving the videos. Yeah, exciting, and hopefully we'll get a few more fish on the bank this year. I really enjoyed doing the fishery reviews. I like visiting new places, using different tactics and stuff like that, working the fisheries out. And I've got a few fisheries in mind. What I also want to do during the warmer months, and something that I get asked a lot to go and do, is get a big catfish on the bank. I'm talking like 60, 70 pound plus. I'll be getting out, I'll be doing more 24, 48 hour sessions where I can, where my business permits me to, and we'll see if we can get a big cat on the bank. Also, folks, while I don't think I really push my own products, I just tell you about what I'm using, I will be mentioning that kind of stuff less, because I think it is putting a few people off watching my videos. As long as the website's making me enough money to pay my bills, I'm not bothered, folks, honestly. For those of you that go on the website and support me, I thank you very much. I'll be opening the website back up in late March. So obviously I've shut it through the winter just to give me more time out on the bank, because it's a really tough winter, and to get good content you need to be on the bank more. That's the long and short of it. So I'll be opening that back up in spring, and I'll be talking a lot less about my products and more about other people's products and stuff like that, because I know that is what you guys want to see. It's educational for you. You want to know what works, you want to know what doesn't work. So I'll try and give you fair and honest reviews of some products and baits. Right, rant over, folks. I meant to not be doing much talking today. I blame you guys. Not the fact that I can't shut up. Here we are. So as you can see, PVA is completely melted off. Let's change this. As a businessman myself, I really don't understand the view of some of these fisheries. You'd have thought they'd be jumping at the chance for me to come and film at their venues for free. You know how much advertising costs these days, so I don't know. I think for a lot of these fishery owners it's run more like a hobby, so they're not bothered about the money. But I tell you what, they're always quick to take your money. So it must matter a little bit. So there you go, we just swapped that hook length over, size 12 hook, 7x8mm wafter. So that's ready to go back out. Let's bring the other one in. I think what happens is I'll do my videos and these fisheries will get ultra busy for the next 2 or 3 weeks. The locals will then go down to fish, they can't get on the pegs that they want, and they'll then moan to the fishery owners that it's got really busy. I think what then happens is the fishery owners vent that frustration back at me that people aren't happy about it. But what I can promise you is there's more positives to me coming doing these videos than negatives. You'll be able to see how best to fish the fishery. You know, there's more money going into the fishery so they can buy more stock. There's so many benefits to it. So I think what the fishery owners need to do is look at the long-term benefits of the advertising. And I'll try and fish somewhere different every week. I'll spread out where I'm fishing. So they'll never get really busy for a long period of time. It's always short-lived. Again, I'm just pressing a layer of pellets there into the bottom of the banjo feeder firmly, then pressing the hook and the wafter in, and I'm just going to cap that with some more pellets. Let it sink. I need to change the battery in one of my bite alarms, it keeps flashing. Guessing that means the battery needs changing. And these Fox Mini Microns. Bait runner on. There is something really satisfying about using a mould with a method feeder, isn't there? Look at that neat little package. Ready to go in the solid bag. Obviously keep your solid bags dry. Then I'm just going to, again, wet my fingers. Put the solid bag around the stem, lick and stick the corners down, inject it with a little bit of liquid, prick it full of holes so it dissolves quicker, and bomb it out. Look at that. Cracking little parcel that, folks. Sinking, sinking, sinking. So deep, this fishery. At least 15 foot, if not more, in some parts. Fishing again. Come on, we'll save the blank here. We need a bream or something, don't we? Well, it's certainly been a tough day today so far. I've actually had a couple of runs on the right hand rod, which was the banjo feeder, which I cast a little bit further towards the middle of the lake. I expected a tough day, but this is really tough, but still got high hopes. What time are we on? 1:15. So we've probably got another 2 hours of fishing left. More than enough time to get a fish on the bank. I'm not giving up yet. I'll probably start getting packed up at about 3:15 and hopefully miss the traffic back to Manchester. But I'll be able to get method feeder fishing this week with Papa West. But I think I'll stick the method feeder out on a sleeper rod. And I'll fish float for other species, because the fishing is starting to get tough now. It's been a really good winter for carp actually. A lot of carp have been coming out places, but over this last couple of weeks it's really started to drop off. I think because we've had such a hot summer, the carp have fed a lot further into the winter than they probably normally would have. More readily anyway. Obviously carp will feed year round, but you need to get those consistent mild spells over a few days. And if it goes to double digits, you've definitely got a chance of a few carp. But there's... Oh, here we are. Oh, it's a bream, but is it on? Can we save the blank? Don't lose it. It's a bream. Are we going to save the blank here? I'm not ready. Here we are. He's saved the blank, the lad. This is on the Just Banjo feeder. And there we go, the classic tactics of the banjo feeder and the sweet corn wafter has saved us a blank on a really cold day. Let's get it back. knock my brew over though. I don't mind getting bream slimed up at this time of year, or any time of year to be honest. I'd quite like to go and target some big bream in spring, just before they start spawning. That's the best time for bream, definitely. Well, my little test today hasn't really proved anything, has it? Unfortunately. I would love to keep trying this, but what I think I'm going to do is just fish my method feeder on a sleeper rod for the rest of the winter and keep myself busy on the tip rod or on the float, just picking off silvers and stuff like that. It makes a more interesting video for YouTube. And then when spring comes back around, we'll start up with the reviews and the tests and stuff like that. I want to carry on with the supermarket bait series as well. There's loads of different supermarket baits that I want to try. I still need to get this big perch on the bank as well. So that might mean me trying a couple of new winter venues that I know holds perch. These method feeder pellets have been perfect today. Probably the best I've done them in ages. Sometimes I forget about the pellets when I'm messing about with the camera and stuff like that, and I end up overwetting them or messing them up a little bit. I can always salvage them, but they're very, very good today. A subscriber on the opposite bank over there, he's got a silver. One of the biggest tips that I can give you at this time of year when it comes to method feeder fishing is persistence and perseverance, and make sure that you're wrapped up warm, because if you're uncomfortable you aren't going to sit around all day and wait for bites. So make sure that you're comfortable and try and have the patience to sit on your hands and not mess about with your rods. It really does help if you're fishing them on bite alarm rather than watching a tip. I find if you're watching a tip you're more likely to mess about with it. If you can, just stick it on a bite alarm, make yourself a brew, chill out, enjoy what's going on around you. Or stay at home, keep warm and watch my videos. Get your fishing fix that way. It's not for everybody, this. I know that people like to be catching when they're out. And winter fishing can be hit and miss. It can be hit and miss. You can have really good days, or you can have days like this where you're really struggling to get anything on the bank, even silvers. Got a really good head of bream in here. Really good head of bream. But we've had the best part of a week of heavy ice. Everywhere's been frozen over. So it definitely will put them down. When that ice melts off, it can change the water temperature drastically. Oh. Did you see that then? I don't know whether you can see that bobbing on the camera. It's a gentle little twitch. I don't think the method feeder in a solid bag tactic is a complete write-off. I think it's absolutely brilliant for deep lakes like this. We tried it last time and it worked great. But it might be that the carp just aren't feeding. But it's a great way of getting a perfect presentation down on the deck in a small little parcel without any kind of spread. So there's a time and a place for it. It's not something that I'm going to be using all the time, but I think it's definitely something to have in your arsenal. The banjo feeder has had all the bites. So banjo feeder or hybrid feeder for the win in the winter months, I think. There's a little bit of a summary. But like I said, we've got one last cast. Probably another half an hour's fishing. And we'll see if we can even the scores. Even though I've only had one skimmer today, I've had a really enjoyable day out on the bank. I've had a right good chat with a couple of subscribers. I've been watching the tree creepers flitting about in the trees behind me. There's been a little mouse scurrying around behind me as well that I've been watching. Just taking in all the wildlife. You can't get better than that. So I just want to wrap the video up there. I just want to say thanks very much for watching. If you did enjoy it, make sure you hit that subscribe button for me. It's all you need to do to support the channel. I don't ask for memberships or anything like that. just ask that you subscribe. That's it. I'll see you next time, folks.